Horrible for road racing, good for drifting. We do not want the rear to be towing out. Why might I increase my tow out?
At FDF, we spent years mastering our craft, from precise welding and machining to competing at the highest level of drifting. Every week, we'll be giving you our tips, tricks, and all the insider knowledge you need straight from our shop to your screen. Welcome to Just a Tip Tuesday.
I am coming to you live from Just a Tip Tuesday here at FDF Race Shop. I'm Josiah, I own the place, and I'm going to talk to you guys about tow and tips on tow that have to do with your drift car. First, I'm going to tell you what I run in the front. Then I'm going to talk a bunch. Then I'm going to tell you what I run in the rear. So you're going to have to watch the whole video in order to get both. Tips on tow. What do we do when we set up a drift car for our alignment specs? What are the three main things that you focus on? Your camber, your caster, and your tow. Yes, there are far more kinematics involved with setting up the front end of your car, but whenever somebody's asking what you're running, those are the three main things. We're not talking about caster or camber, we are going to talk about tow. So what do most people run on a drift car? Tow out. Generally between 1/8 of an inch all the way up to 1/2 inch of tow out, which I have seen people run in FD. They may be compensating for something, or they may be trying to add some positive Ackerman, but we'll get into that later. What do I personally run? I run between 1/8 and 3/16 of an inch tow out, which is about 0.2 degrees on a alignment machine that uses degrees. The way that we measure this, generally speaking at the track, is with tow plates. So after our initial alignment, we then use tow plates at the track. The initial alignment has confirmed that all four wheels are straight and in line with the chassis, nicely centered. And then from there, we make equal adjustments left to right whenever we adjust our tow. Why might I increase my tow out? I will increase my tow out if I want slightly better turn-in response. It's complicated to describe why your turn-in response is better, but let me explain something to you as quickly as I can, because this is just a tip. This is not a fully in-depth, we're not giving it all to you, okay? Basically, your static tow, what you have set up when the steering wheel is straight, your static tow is only relevant before the drift is initiated and kind of right at the beginning of your initiation, because once you've already initiated and you're actually in drift, your tow is no longer affected by what you set up statically. Now it is all to do with your Ackerman. Also, on your lead wheel, the majority of the weight of the vehicle is on your lead wheel. Sometimes the trail wheel isn't even touching the ground, so your tow really doesn't affect the handling of your car while in drift that much. Only when you're initiating and transitioning and basically driving straight. That is when your static tow is going to be the most relevant. Now, what would say, let's throw the opposite at it, and what's gonna happen if I have too much tow in? So tow in is for high speed, straight line stability and very slight amounts of it. You really don't want both wheels allowed to be freely guided without having a slight force against each other. So whenever you're setting up any form of racing or driving, you need to have a small amount of tow, kind of no matter what, to allow for that very slight scrub, left tire versus right. This helps with alignment torque. This helps with guiding the car. Now, when we talk about slight, we can have even the minimalist amount, basically 0.1 of a degree, or even less, but basically we always have some form of tow in or tow out depending on the type of racing. That's it for drifting in the front. Take what you will from that. I told you what I run and I told you what most people run. The reason why someone might compensate with a lot of tow out is because positive Ackerman induces scrub while in drift, okay? This can do two things: slow the chassis a little bit and also increase your self-alignment torque, because those two wheels are trying to fight each other back to straight because of the scrub difference between the two. So the more tow out you have, the more those wheels want to be pointed back straight again. Okay, so they want to even out the load between your left and right wheel. So the more toe out you have, it does induce a form of self-alignment torque, and some people do prefer that feeling. It will scrub your tires quite quickly on the inside, and it will do some excessive wear and slow the car a little bit in corners. But like I said, while you're in drift, sometimes that trailing wheel is not even touching the ground. On a bank, it does almost nothing. You can see them usually locked up with a little bit of left foot brake pressure. And yeah, so while you're in drift, it doesn't really do anything. For the rear, so let's talk about toe in the rear. A tip for you guys, towing in will increase your forward drive on the car. Why is this? Basically, whenever we're drifting, we're in a constant slip. Being in a constant slip, tires are often measured, and the compound is determined by the slip angle of the tire and what these tires are able to withstand before they slip, before they lose traction. Now in drifting, we're purposely putting these tires into a permanent slip. Also, engaging those two tires, basically two applied forces against each other, just allows for a harder driving force in a certain direction. Now, if we were to tow the rear out, for example, which a lot of factory multi-link cars do when you lower them, and under compression, a lot of them will tow out, this is going to kind of do the opposite effect. When your car leans, if I'm drifting to the right and I have tow out in the rear, when I initiate the drift and I compress my suspension, the tire is going to tow out even further, and it's actually going to encourage the car to over rotate and to steer, almost like it has rear steering. Because when I shift my weight, I go from having 50% weight on each tire to having probably 70, 80% of the weight on the outside tire, compressing the suspension and towing it out, basically giving me rear wheel steering. Either it's going to over rotate, it's going to lose traction, and it's going to not drive the car forward, because basically the car is a driving force and our front end is our boat rudder, and we are steering a dragster around a corner. That's essentially what drifting is. And we do not want the rear to be towing out. We want it to be towing in, as well as having the car set up with static tow right off the bat. So let's get into what I run. I personally run right around a half an inch of toe in on my Corvette, on my 240. I have gone as far as putting it at 1 inch of toe in with minimal bump steer or toe gain or dynamic toe, whatever you want to call it. I will only ever use that if I feel like I'm not able to recover well enough on a certain track, or if I'm using a certain tire, mostly just based on using a spec tire. Usually I'm using a tire that has a ton of grip and I don't need to do much with the dynamic toe side of things. But if I'm using a spec tire, I will induce some dynamic toe. Dynamic toe is under compression, my wheels are towing in, which is also called bump steer. This is horrible for road racing. This is good for drifting. It feels a little weird when you're running up and your toe in the rear is messing up a bunch, but once you're in drift, you really don't notice it, and you have a very strong on throttle response when you have dynamic toe, especially when you're modulating, or if you're doing a lot of transitions. You'll feel like as soon as you step on the gas, you're going, you'll feel that toe change and you'll feel that additional grip, and then as the toe releases and you go off throttle, you're gonna lose grip, which could be good for floating in certain areas of the track and so on and so forth. It's pretty in depth when you get that involved with setting up and playing around with toe, but basically, in essence, that is just a tip Tuesday for toe, maybe more than a tip. Nonetheless, I hope you guys learned something, and this is basically my opinion on my experience with playing with toe quite a bit. There's lots of data on this, especially with road racing. There's a lot of tips and tricks on setting up and messing around with toe when it comes to road racing. Drifting is definitely a big, this works for me, but it might not work for you thing. That's what's worked for me. We'll see you guys next week on Tuesday, where we're gonna talk about something else that's cool. Don't know what it is. That's it, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.